I worked the night shift at a hospital. It was busy, and I took the late hours to support my family while my wife was sick. I was nervous about starting this job, but I thought I could handle it. The hospital was old, built in the 1960s. The lights flickered, and the halls were always eerily quiet. I didn't think much of it at first, but I'll never forget those nights. On my third shift, I noticed a room with flickering lights. I thought it was the wiring acting up. I felt tired, so I kept walking. But as I passed the door, chills crept up my spine. I quickened my pace, shaking it off. It shouldn't have bothered me, right? But I found myself looking back at that room more than once, hoping I wouldn't see anything strange. As the nights rolled on, things got weirder. I heard whispers in the break room. At first, I dismissed them as my tired mind playing tricks on me. I filled my coffee cup and listened. The whispers floated through the air, soft and chilling. Whenever I turned to look, no one was there, just silence and shadows stretching longer than they should. I kept it to myself. I didn't want to sound crazy. Then I started seeing figures out of the corner of my eye. They darted just out of sight, and when I turned, the hallways were empty. My heart raced as I blinked, trying to shake it off. Patients began talking about strange sights, too. One told me a girl was watching him. I wanted to laugh it off, but felt my stomach twist instead. Maybe they were disoriented from the medication. Maybe I was losing it. One night, I heard someone call my name. "Mark," a low voice rasped. I froze and glanced around, but the hall was empty. My heart pounded. I didn't know whether to call for help or just laugh. I paced back to my station, feeling restless. Was I scared or just exhausted? Then I met a patient who insisted a girl was watching him. I smiled and asked, "Who?" He just murmured, "She's right there." Panic bubbled in my chest. I shifted my gaze to the corner of the room, trying to see. Was it even real? The flickering lights came back, and I couldn't ignore them anymore. Curiosity took over. I stood before that ominous door, sweating and holding my breath. I opened it fast, expecting maybe a prank or nothing at all. What I saw still haunts me. It was empty, but the air felt thick and cold. Shadows danced in the far corner. I took a step inside. My heart raced, and fear wrapped around me. I couldn't breathe. The lights flickered again, and I felt a presence, something watching me. I stumbled back, slamming the door shut. I didn't sleep that night. I just sat at my station, wide awake, replaying the events. I wanted to believe it was my imagination, but deep down I knew it wasn't. Those nights still haunt me. I wish I could explain what happened, but I can't. I never went back to that room again. The next night I couldn't get that room out of my mind. I felt like I was being pulled back by a force I didn't understand. I tried to focus on my work, checking on patients and filing reports, but every creak of the building made my heart jump. I glanced at the clock. 2 hours left in my shift. It felt like an eternity. In the break room, I connected with a fellow nurse, Sarah. She'd worked nights longer than I had, and I thought maybe she could help. "Have you ever noticed anything strange around here?" I asked, keeping my voice low. She frowned, her eyes darting to the hallway before she spoke. "Like what?" "Ghosts?" "This place is old, Mark. You're probably just tired," she said with a half-hearted laugh. But I saw the way her fingers played with her coffee cup, her eyes betraying her. "I'm serious. There's this room," I started, but the words caught in my throat. Who would believe me? "I just feel something weird, like someone is watching." She studied me, and for a moment I thought she might say something reassuring, but then her expression shifted. "Okay, but if you start seeing things at night, you need to report it. It's disturbing." I nodded, feeling a wave of embarrassment wash over me. Maybe I was losing it after all. We exchanged small talk for a bit, but I could tell she was eager to move on. As the shift dragged on, I felt increasingly isolated. When I got back to my station, the whispers returned. This time they seemed louder, like they were coming from that same flickering room. I shut my eyes tight and shook my head. I had to ignore it. But deep down, I was drawn. I knew I shouldn't go back, but the urge was too strong. When the clock ticked to midnight, I glanced down the long, dimly lit hallway. The shadows seemed to stretch and bend, inviting me closer. It was a stupid idea, but I was tired of being afraid. I stood up, my feet moving before I could rethink it. I approached the door again. The flickering lights had stopped, but the air felt heavy, almost as if it were alive. Just breathe, I told myself. I reached for the handle, hesitating. Then I swung it open. The room was dark, but not empty. I squinted, my eyes adjusting to the dimness. I could see the corner where the shadows played. That's when I saw it. A child's doll lying on the floor. I'd never noticed it before. It was old and dirty, with one eye missing. Chills ran down my spine as I crouched to pick it up. Then the air shifted. I felt a cold gust rush past me and I froze. A whisper curled around my ear. Mark. It sounded familiar and chilling all at once. I bolted back and slammed the door shut, my breath caught in my throat. What had I just disturbed? Whatever it was not lying dormant anymore. I backed away from the door, promising myself I wouldn't return. But a feeling settled in my gut. It wasn't over yet. I barely slept that day. My mind was racing, replaying the events of the night over and over. I could still feel the jagged chill from the whisper. It gnawed at me as I lay in bed, the shadows of my room closing in. I wanted to forget, to brush it off as a figment of my imagination, but that damn doll wouldn't let me. When I arrived at the hospital for my next night shift, apprehension hit me like a freight train. The air felt thick with tension. I tried to shake it off, focusing on my duties. I checked in on patients, made notes, but all the while, my heart raced in anticipation of that door. Around 3 a.m., I found myself in the break room again. Sarah was there, sipping her coffee. The dim lights flickered, matching my nerves. I couldn't help myself. "Did you ever feel like something was off in the hospital?" I asked, searching for confirmation. She looked up from her cup, her brow furrowed. "What do you mean? Off how?" I hesitated. "Like, I don't know, like someone's watching you?" I shrugged, trying to sound casual. Her eyes widened slightly. "Okay, if you're feeling paranoid, you should really think about going home. Seriously." Her reaction made my stomach turn. Maybe it wasn't just me. I needed more information, but I also didn't want to sound like a complete idiot. I straightened up and changed the subject, trying to push the feeling down. As my shift rolled on, the whispers returned, but this time they had a rhythm, almost like a song. I glanced at the clock. Another 3 hours left. I couldn't resist the urge to investigate that room again. When the clock struck midnight, I felt a pull. I tried to convince myself to stay put, but my feet betrayed me. I couldn't ignore it anymore. If I was going mad, I wanted to know it. I moved down the hall, heart pounding louder than before. This time I didn't hesitate. I pushed open the door, and the chilling gust welcomed me back. The room was still as I remembered it, but something was different. The doll was gone. My breath hitched. Where was it? Then, a loose scrap of paper caught my eye on the ground. I bent down to pick it up, my hands trembling. It was a faded photograph of a girl, maybe 8 or 9 years old, with dark hair and an innocent smile. Her eyes seemed to glow, and a knot formed in my stomach. The same eyes as the doll? As I stood there clutching the photo, I felt a presence behind me. Turning slowly, I caught a glimpse of movement in the corner of my eye. When I faced the darkness, there was nothing. The shadows danced, teasing me. But then I heard it again. The whisper. Mark. Panic surged through me. I bolted out of the room, slamming the door behind me. My chest heaved as I stumbled away, heart racing. I could feel the weight of eyes on me, and I knew I couldn't ignore it anymore. Whatever was happening, it was escalating. I needed answers. I headed to Sarah's station, adrenaline coursing through my veins. I had to tell her what I found. But just as I reached her, the lights flickered violently, plunging the hallway into darkness. Then all went silent. I stared into the void that enveloped the corridor, my breath caught in my throat. The flickering lights had stopped, leaving behind a sinister silence. I could barely see my hand in front of my face. Panic clawed at me, begging me to retreat, but an undeniable urge pulled me forward. "Sarah," I called, my voice shaky. No response. I stepped cautiously, feeling my way along the wall, each step igniting a frantic whisper in my mind. What was happening? Just then, the lights flashed back on. I jumped back, expecting to find Sarah at her station. Instead, the hallway was empty. I swiveled around, searching for any sign of her, but it felt like I was the only one left in the hospital. My heart raced as I glanced back toward the door I had just fled. It loomed in the distance, dark and foreboding. I had to know what was going on. Was the doll connected to Sarah, to the girl in the photograph? I took a deep breath and made my way back, my body trembling with dread. I gripped the photo tightly, as if it could anchor me in the storm of confusion swirling inside. I pushed open the door again, but my stomach dropped when I saw that the room was no longer the empty shell I remembered. The doll was back, sitting in the center of the room, staring at me with those hollow eyes. I wanted to scream, to run, but something strange held me there, a sense of gravitation that made my feet feel rooted to the floor. "Welcome back," a voice echoed softly. It was Sarah. I spun around and she stood in the doorway, but something felt off. Her expression was vacant, her posture rigid. "Sarah?" I stammered, glancing back at the doll. It continued to sit, eerily motionless. "You scared me. What happened? Where were you?" She stepped closer, her smile unnaturally wide. "You should see what I found," she said. Her voice was flat, devoid of its usual warmth, and another shiver raced down my spine. "What do you mean? What did you find?" I asked, unease tightening my throat. But before she could answer, the lights flickered again and buzzed, plunging the room into darkness once more. I fumbled for the door, hoping to escape whatever nightmare was unfolding. Just as I reached the handle, the voice cut through the darkness, now sharp and cutting. "Stay with us, Mark." I froze. It sounded like the doll. What was happening? Desperate, I turned to Sarah, looking for a reprieve from the chaos. "We need to leave, now." But she didn't move. Instead, her eyes glazed over, fixed on something past me. "She wants to play, Mark," Sarah said, her voice now eerily sing-song. That's when I saw it. The doll's mouth moved, and it whispered my name. The chilling laughter echoed through the void, growing closer. I stumbled back, heart pounding. The shadows closed in, and panic clawed at the edges of my mind. In a fleeting moment of clarity, I knew I had to get out, but I also needed to know the truth about the girl and the doll. I turned and bolted. As I sprinted down the hall, the whispers crescendoed, wrapping around me, tightening like a noose. "Mark, don't leave." I didn't look back, not this time. I raced toward the exit, fueled by fear. I needed answers. I needed to end this, whatever this was. And I could feel it wasn't over yet. The corridor stretched endlessly in front of me, an inky blackness waiting to swallow me whole. I didn't stop running until I reached the stairwell. I burst through the door and slammed it behind me, panting heavily. It felt like the walls were closing in, but the darkness wasn't gone. It clung to my skin, whispering in my ears, taunting me. What was happening? Why was Sarah acting like that? I glanced around the dimly lit stairwell. Panic surged as I remembered her words. "She wants to play, Mark." The doll's laughter echoed in my mind as I raced down the stairs. I had to get to the main floor. I needed help. As I descended, the air grew colder. A chill ran down my spine, and I felt an ice-cold grip on my shoulder, freezing me in place. I whirled around, heart racing, but the empty stairs mocked me. Taking a breath to steady myself, I continued down. When I reached the ground floor, the lights flickered again. I could hear footsteps echoing behind me. I forced myself to focus, not daring to look back. I shoved through the exit door and into the lobby. It was eerily quiet. Not a soul in sight. The front desk, usually manned by a receptionist, sat empty. I glanced around, desperate for answers, when something caught my eye, a newspaper clipping on the desk. I walked over, my hands trembling. The headline read, "Local girl disappears, no leads in case." The girl in the photo was the same one from the doll. My breath hitched. It couldn't be a coincidence, could it? Just then, the fluorescent lights overhead began to flicker yet again. There was that laughter again, echoing, wrapping around me. The hair on my arms stood on end. Suddenly a loud crash resonated from the hallway behind me. I spun around, my heart racing. In the distance, I saw a shadow move. A figure darted into view before vanishing again. "Sarah!" I yelled out, my voice echoing back at me. I stepped cautiously toward the hallway, my pulse roaring in my ears. I needed to know what that was. The need to find Sarah pushed me forward, though every instinct screamed to run. As I crept into the darkened hallway, I felt the pressure in the air shift, like a storm was brewing. Then, out of the corner of my eye, I spotted something. It was the doll, perched on a chair in the break room. No longer in the room where I'd first encountered it, but somehow, it had made its way here. The doll sat there, its eyes locked onto mine, and that laugh erupted once more, cold and mocking. I couldn't move, paralyzed by fear. Then I heard a voice, soft and deceptive. "You're not supposed to be here, Mark." I jolted, my mind racing. Who was speaking? Then I heard a sound that made my blood run cold, a childlike voice clear as day, echoing my name. "Mark, play with us." My breath quickened. I had to escape. I forced myself into motion, retreating back toward the lobby, but not before I glimpsed a shadow moving beside the doll, a flicker of something that resembled a small child. I sprinted back into the lobby, breathless. I felt the weight of unseen eyes pressing in from every corner. Was it the doll? Was it Sarah? Whatever this was, I had to finish it. But how? Then I realized I hadn't explored the basement yet. Something told me that whatever was going on, it started there. I raced toward the stairs leading down, the whispers now a crescendo. What waited for me below, I didn't know, but I had to find out. The basement door creaked as I pushed it open. A chill seeped into my bones, making me shiver. I descended the stairs slowly, each step echoing as if the silence itself breathed back at me. The air was thick, almost suffocating, and the darkness felt alive, closing in around me. I reached the bottom and turned on my flashlight. The beam pierced through the dark, revealing a dim hallway lined with closed doors. A faint humming sound vibrated through the air, as if the very walls were holding secrets I dared not uncover. My heart hammered in my chest, and for a moment I questioned my decision to come down here. "Sarah!" I called out, my voice wavering slightly. "Are you down here?" The only response was the echo of my own voice. Fear coiled in my gut, but I pressed forward. I had to know the truth. As I walked, I noticed something that made me stop. A door at the end of the corridor stood ajar, a flickering light spilling into the hallway. I stepped closer, the light illuminating an old sign above the door that read, "Children's Ward." A knot formed in my stomach. It wasn't just a basement, it was a forgotten part of the hospital. What happened here? I pushed the door open further, and the light flickered to reveal a room filled with broken toys and abandoned beds. The air reeked of neglect, and dust coated everything. The shadows seemed to dance as I shone my flashlight around, revealing more dolls. not unlike the one that had haunted me. That's when I saw it. A small shape crouched in the corner, darting behind a pile of discarded toys. I froze, my breath shallow. "Sarah," I whispered, desperate for her to be there, for it to be her. But instead of a response, I heard that laughter again, the same cold, empty laugh that sent shivers down my spine. It wasn't just the doll's laughter now. It was followed by a chorus of giggles echoing from all around me. A wave of panic washed over me. I had to get out. I turned to leave, but the door slammed shut behind me. I spun around, my heart racing. "Mark, play with us," the child's voice sang out again, but it was different this time, more sinister, laced with malice. I pressed my back to the door, my pulse pounding in my ears. I felt a rush of air, cold and sharp, then heard soft footsteps approaching. A shadow flickered near the entrance of the room, growing larger with each passing heartbeat. In that moment, everything changed. I needed to confront whatever was in the room. I grabbed the nearest toy, a broken doll, and held it like a weapon. "Who are you?" I shouted, my voice steadier than I felt. The shadow stopped, and the laughter faded. A small figure stepped into the light. It wasn't just one child. It was a group of them, all with wide, unblinking eyes. "Will you play?" one of them asked, their voice eerily sweet. That's when I realized I was trapped. There was nowhere to run, and the toys around me came to life in my mind's eye, twisting into dark reflections of the children who once played here. "Please, no," I begged, my voice breaking. But my plea was met with silence. The shadows curled around me, and I felt the cold grip of despair. Just as I thought I'd be consumed, a figure dashed past me, a blur of movement. It was Sarah. "Mark, come on!" she shouted, her eyes wide and filled with fear. She was alive. Hope surged within me, but before I could move, the room went dark, plunging everything into blackness. I stumbled forward, disoriented in the sudden darkness. My heart pounded as I strained to hear any sound, any sign of Sarah or the children. I felt the cold wall beside me, searching for a door, a window, some way out. "Sarah?" I called again, more panicked this time. "Where are you?" Nothing, just silence, and the distinct feeling that I was not alone. Then a buzz crackled back to life, the flickering light from earlier illuminating the room again. But it was different now. The children were no longer in front of me. Instead, the walls seemed to pulse with energy, shadows shifting unnaturally, as if they had a form of their own. "Mark?" Sarah's voice broke through the haze of darkness, closer now. "We need to go." "I'm here. Where are you?" I replied, moving toward her voice, but every step felt heavier, like I was wading through water. Suddenly, a loud crash resonated from behind me. I turned instinctively, swinging the flashlight in that direction. The beam landed on a toy horse that had fallen to the ground, its eyes glinting in the light as if watching me. "Why is everything so wrong?" I whispered, my throat dry with fear. I heard a rustling noise, and then I saw her, Sarah, crouched behind one of the beds, trying to stay hidden. "Mark, hide," she hissed. Before I could understand, the door slammed open with a loud bang. A figure entered the room, tall and shadowy, blocking the exit. The children's voices returned, but now they were wild, calling for me, pleading and taunting all at once. "Come play with us, Mark," they cried, a chorus of voices blending into a chilling melody. I felt a sickening sense of dread. I darted toward Sarah, who peeked out from her hiding spot, her face pale. "We don't have much time," she said urgently. I grabbed her hand, pulling her close. "What happened? What did you see?" "It doesn't matter. We just need to leave." But just as I turned back to the door, the figure stepped forward, its features obscured by shadows. "You can't leave," it rasped, the voice echoing unnaturally. "Not yet." Everything froze. I could feel my breath catch in my throat, the dread settling like a heavy blanket. The flickering light cast unsettling shadows across the children's faces, making it hard to see who was friend or enemy. Then, in that moment of paralyzing fear, I recalled a detail from my childhood. A story about children who had gone missing in a hospital just like this, pulled into a realm where they couldn't be found. "Mark, we must go now," Sarah urged, pulling me toward a side door at the far end of the room. We rushed toward it, but just as our hands touched the doorknob, it shattered into countless pieces, scattering across the floor like broken glass. "Run!" I shouted, glancing back at the figure that was now advancing, and those ghastly, unblinking eyes locked onto mine. That's when I realized whatever held this place needed us to stay, and it wouldn't let us go without a fight. The air thickened again, pressing in around us, and I could feel the dark laughter surging up from behind. "Mark, will you play?" the shadowy figure demanded, reaching out toward us as we fought to escape. Together we sprinted, not knowing where we'd go, just desperate to get away. Time seemed to stretch. Every step felt like a leap into the unknown. Every heartbeat a countdown to something we couldn't understand or outrun. Just as we reached what looked like a flickering light ahead, hope began to flicker within me again. But then I felt her grip loosen, her body slipping away like smoke through my fingers. "Sarah!" I yelled, twisting around, panic gripping me tighter than any dark shadow. She was gone. The laughter roared to life once more, drowning me in chaos. I was alone in the darkness again, desperate for something, anything to pull me back into the light. I spun around in a whirl of panic, the laughter echoing in my mind like a twisted reminder that I was being hunted. The darkness had swallowed Sarah whole, and I was left standing there, lost and frightened. I wasn't sure if the flickering light I had seen was real, or just another trick of this nightmarish place. "Sarah!" I shouted again, my voice hoarse. It was useless. I was utterly alone. The sounds of children's voices and the figure's menacing presence faded in and out like a broken radio. All I heard clearly was the beating of my own heart, far too loud in the stillness. Deep breaths. I needed to think. I stumbled backward, not wanting to linger in the open space. I groped along the wall, desperately searching for something, anything, that could help me escape. My fingers brushed over something rough. A door frame, maybe. The thought of a way out pushed me forward, but every second felt like the darkness was consuming me. I took a few steps, hugging the wall, until I found what I hoped was the exit. My pulse quickened as I gently pushed against the door. It swung open with a groan, revealing a narrow corridor bathed in an eerie blue light. I squinted, half expecting to see a face waiting for me, but there was nothing. Just the haunting hum of air circulating. "Where are you?" I whispered, partly to Sarah, partly to myself. I stepped through the threshold, the silence of the hallway wrapping around me like a shroud. The air smelled musty, like rotting paper and dust. I hesitated, but there was nowhere else to go. I needed to find Sarah. The hallway seemed to stretch forever, twisting and turning in on itself. With every step, my shoes echoed against the linoleum floor. I glanced over my shoulder often, convinced that the figure from before was stalking me from the shadows. Anxiety gnawed at me, urging me to keep moving. Then, out of nowhere, I heard a soft whisper, barely audible. "Mark, help us." The children's voices again. I strained to hear more, my heart racing at the possibility of finding them. "Is that you?" I called out, louder this time. "I'm coming." I followed the sound down the corridor until it led me to a door on the left, slightly ajar. It was a small room, lit by the same sickly blue light. Cautiously, I pushed the door further open. Inside, I found a room filled with old toys and hospital equipment. It felt strangely familiar, yet ominous. In the corner, I spotted a small table stacked with crayon drawings. Bright colors of children playing, but their faces were scribbled out, their eyes blank. My stomach churned. "Where are you?" I asked again, but I got no answer. Instead, I felt a cold breeze sweep through the room, along with a distant laughter, horrid and joyful. It carried a weight that pressed down on my chest. It was then I noticed something. On the wall, there was a small window, but it was covered with bars. I could hardly get close, but I had to see what lay beyond. I edged closer, glancing around for any sign of a threat. That's when I saw it. A figure just outside the window staring back at me. A child, pale and gaunt, eyes wide and pleading. My breath caught as our eyes met, feeling a strange connection through the glass. But in an instant, the boy's face twisted into a horrific grin, revealing too many teeth, unnatural and wrong. I stumbled back, heart racing. The laughter erupted again, and I realized I had to move. I turned back to the door, planning to escape this nightmare. But as my hand reached for the doorknob, I froze. The door slammed shut, sealing my fate. The laughter swirled around me, and darkness seeped into the edges of my vision. I was trapped, and whatever this place was, it wasn't done with me yet. The door felt like it was breathing against my hand, as if it too shared my fear. I yanked at the knob, but it held fast. Panic surged through me. I turned, searching for another way out, but the room felt smaller, closing in. The laughter echoed louder, mocking me. "Let me out!" I shouted, pounding my fists against the door. It was no use. The laughter faded slightly, but it left behind an eerie silence that pressed down on me like a weight. I backed away, glancing wildly around the room. My eyes landed on the drawings again, and something caught my attention. A piece of paper fluttered under the table, as if beckoning me to it. I crouched down, heart thumping, and reached for it. It was a note, crumpled, but legible. "Find the light mark. It's the key." My brows furrowed. Why was I being addressed? Who wrote this? Before I could think much more, another chill swept through me. I shoved the note in my pocket and looked around again. The window. It wasn't barred on the top. I sprinted to it, panic fueling my movements. I pried at the edges, breathing heavily. Just as it creaked open, I heard soft footsteps behind me. Whoever, or whatever was here, was close. I dared not turn around. In a rush, I climbed onto the sill and peered outside. Instead of the expected street or yard, I saw endless darkness. It felt like I was looking into a void, with no end in sight. But then, faintly, I saw something glimmer. A flicker of light far in the distance. My heart leapt. "Mark, help us." The voice again, clearer now. I had to go towards it. I squeezed through the window, scraping my shoulder against the rough edge. I dropped down, landing awkwardly but steadying myself. The air outside felt cool against my skin, but it was thick, almost heavy. I stumbled, but my feet quickly found solid ground. I turned away from the hospital, chasing after the light. It pulsed, drawing me closer. With every step, the laughter faded into the background, replaced by the muffled cries of children. As I got nearer, the glow brightened, revealing silhouettes. Figures moved just out of reach, their forms flickering like the light itself. Fear twisted my stomach. I recognized those shapes. They were children, just like the figures in the drawings. "Help us, please!" they chorused, their voices combined in a haunting melody. I hesitated, torn between the desire to help and the fear of what this place had already shown me. The light behind them glimmered invitingly, but the whispers wrapped around my thoughts like vines. Then I noticed something chilling. Among the flickering figures, one stood starkly still. It was the child from the window. His face was twisted into that unnatural grin, his eyes wide and unblinking. Before I could react, he pointed towards the light, and suddenly everything went dark. A loud crash echoed behind me, stealing my breath. My heart raced as shadows melted into the night. I was surrounded, but I couldn't see who or what was coming for me. "Get back!" I shouted, but the words felt useless. I took a step back and tripped, falling hard. Before the darkness could consume me entirely, I saw it again, a flicker of light. But it felt further away. Gritting my teeth, I forced myself up. I had to reach it. Whatever was happening needed to stop. I couldn't let fear take me. Not now. With a determined breath, I bolted toward the distant glow, hoping it held more than just more confusion. But as I ran, I could almost feel it trailing behind me, a pressing presence waiting to drag me back into the abyss. I raced toward the light, every muscle in my body screaming for me to keep moving. The darkness clawed at my heels, and behind me, I could hear those childlike voices rising in intensity, pleading, taunting, beckoning me back. But I refused to stop, even as shadows flickered in my peripheral vision, twisting and writhing like trapped souls. The glimmer ahead pulsed in the blackness, illuminating a narrow path. The whispers grew restless, blending into a cacophony that echoed against the walls of my mind. "Mark, come play. Mark, we need you." The words intertwined into a haunting melody that nearly sent me crashing to my knees. I clenched my jaw, forcing the panic down. "Stay back," I shouted, though deep down I wasn't sure if my words were meant for the shadows or myself. All around me the air thickened. I could feel an unseen presence lurk just beyond the edge of the light, hungry and watchful. Then I stumbled upon something solid. A door, barely ajar, sunlight spilling from within. My heart swelled with hope. It felt real. I could escape this madness. I threw myself inside, slamming the door shut behind me. The room was bright and blinding, filled with white walls and sterile light, a stark contrast to the darkness I had just fled. I bent over, catching my breath. For a moment, a sense of safety washed over me, silencing the whispers outside. But as I straightened up, I realized I was not alone. Sarah stood there, her expression a mix of relief and concern. "Mark, you made it!" But before I could respond, the door behind me rattled violently, and the melody of laughter filled the air again. I turned, frozen in my spot, as the shadows seeped into this room. "Mark, come out and play," the voices called, this time more sinister. My skin crawled as the walls trembled, shadows creeping along the floor toward us. "Go!" I shouted at Sarah as the door finally burst open with a thunderous crash, revealing a silhouette that blurred the line between child and monster. The laughter crescendoed, echoing off the walls. "Run!" I grabbed Sarah's wrist and pulled her along with me, dashing past the nightmarish figure. We raced through the brightly lit corridors, heartbeats sinking as we moved in tandem. But the presence of something dark lingered at our heels, whispering, beckoning. "Where do we go?" Sarah cried out, panic rising in her pitch. The exit loomed ahead, but as we approached, the bright light flickered ominously. I could feel the shadows curling around us, a malevolent wind that pressed harder with every stride. I pushed forward, willing the door to be the escape we needed. We burst through the entrance, tumbling into the parking lot. The cool night air hit us like a wave, a stark contrast to the panic that draped over me. Zoning in on my surroundings, I spotted my car sitting just a few feet away, the familiar sight grounding me for just a moment. "Get in!" I shouted, and we dashed toward it, all thoughts of the darkness trailing behind us. But as my hands fumbled with the keys, I felt that familiar chill slip across my back, followed by echoing laughter that we had narrowly escaped. I turned to see shadowy figures watch us from the hospital's entrance. For a brief flicker of time, their faces appeared, those children, twisted and grinning. They stood in the doorway of a nightmarish realm as though beckoning me to return, their eyes alight in the dim glow of the hospital. As we sped off, I glanced back in the rear-view mirror, and the hospital loomed larger than life, an ominous behemoth of fading lights and haunting silhouettes. I could still hear them, their whispers dancing on the wind. "You can't leave. You'll come back to play." The hospital grew smaller and smaller in the distance, but doubt crept in, trailing right beside the lingering laughter. I couldn't shake the feeling that whatever was happening there was far from over. As I drove, the bright headlights illuminated the road ahead, but the darkness still coiled in my mind. What truly lurked within those walls? Why did they want me? My pulse quickened as I thought of Sarah, our eyes meeting in the dim light of the hospital. Had she truly escaped? "Mark," she said softly, pulling me from my thoughts. "Do you think it's over?" I don't know," I admitted, uncertain of the truth. For the first time I was alone with my thoughts, and a thread of dread wove through my gut. And in that uncertain moment I was reminded that some doors can never truly be closed. I found myself wondering how long it would be before I could silence the echoes from the past, if ever. And I realized undeniably that the haunting whispers were merely awaiting the right conditions to return. I drove into the night, every shadow threatening and yet familiar, leaving a part of me behind in the darkness. The questions remained. Did I truly escape? Or had I simply slipped further into their world like so many before me? I kept driving, but their laughter echoed in the back of my mind, a constant reminder that the line between reality and nightmare had never been so thin.